Imagine that a simple act of kindness you did many years ago to help a desperate child came back to change your life. A generous man, who always helped as much as he could, never imagined how far his compassion would go. But decades later, that child reappears, now a powerful woman, carrying a surprising revelation. Who is she? And what does she have to say that could transform everything? Find out now in this emotional story of reunions and second chances. The golden afternoon light bathed the small town of Oak Ridge, painting the old buildings and sturdy trees with shades of orange and yellow. The central square was the heart of the community, where children ran barefoot, adults gathered to chat, and merchants set up their stalls along the pavement. Among them was Sam Carter, a fruit seller who had worked there for over 30 years. Sam was a well-known figure in town, with his worn straw hat and warm smile. His fruits were always the freshest, sourced directly from local farmers, and he took care to arrange every apple and orange neatly on his small wooden stall. Though his life was not easy, widowed since his 40s and raising his son Ethan alone, Sam never failed to treat his customers kindly. That afternoon, as he adjusted a stack of red apples, something caught his attention. A few meters away, a girl stood almost hidden behind a lamppost. She couldn't have been more than 10 years old. Her clothes were torn and dirty, and her light brown hair partially covered her face. But what really caught Sam's attention were the girl's eyes. They were fixed on the apples, large and filled with a mix of hunger and desperation. He stopped what he was doing, tilting his head slightly as he observed the girl. "Hey, little one," he called out, his voice low and friendly. The girl didn't respond, taking a small step back. "It's okay, you don't need to be afraid. Come here, it's all right." She hesitated for a moment, looking around as if expecting someone to appear and stop her. Sam noticed how her hands trembled, how unsure she seemed even to take a step forward. After a few moments, the girl cautiously took a few steps toward the stall, keeping her eyes on the ground. "You look hungry," Sam said gently, leaning in slightly to be closer to her. He picked an apple from the top of the pile and held it out. "Here, take it. This one's for you." The girl looked at the apple, then at Sam, as if assessing whether it was real. Slowly, she stretched out her small hands and took the fruit. "Thank you," she murmured, her voice so weak it almost disappeared into the noise of the square. Sam watched as she took the first bite of the apple. She ate so quickly it seemed she hadn't seen food in days. He felt a pang in his chest, seeing her so hungry. Without saying anything, he grabbed a paper bag and placed a few more fruits inside, an orange, another apple, and a banana. Then, he discreetly slipped a $20 bill into the bottom of the bag and handed it to her. "You're going to take this too," he said, holding the bag firmly until she took it. "And that $20 is for you. Buy yourself something to eat later, or maybe some new clothes." The girl's eyes filled with tears. She looked at Sam, her expression a mix of gratitude and disbelief. "Why are you helping me?" she asked, her voice slightly stronger but still uncertain. "Because it looks like you need it," Sam replied with a smile. "And sometimes, a little help doesn't hurt." The girl stood there for a few more seconds, as if wanting to say something, but then she clutched the bag to her chest and turned around. Before running off, she said only, "Thank you." Her voice was firmer this time, almost as if that small gesture had ignited a spark of courage within her. Sam watched her disappear into the square, blending into the bustle of people. He stood still for a moment, lost in thought. Who was that girl? Where were her parents? What had happened to her for her to be in such a state? He knew he might never have answers to those questions, but he hoped with all his heart that the little he had done for her that day could help. "Dad!" Ethan's voice brought him back to reality. The boy, who was about 10 at the time, came running through the square with a backpack on his back and a smile that lit up his face. "Did you bring the oranges I asked for?" Sam smiled at the sight of his son. He bent down to pick up one of the oranges and tossed it to Ethan, who caught it skillfully. "Of course I did. I don't forget anything." When they got home, they were greeted by the aroma of homemade food. Sam's wife, Clara, was in the kitchen peeling potatoes. She had a calm demeanor but always knew exactly what each family member needed. "Did you bring the apples?" she asked with a smile as she looked at her husband and son. "I did, but wait until you hear this," Sam said as he placed the bags on the table and began recounting the story of the girl he had met in the square. He spoke carefully, trying to describe how fragile and hungry she seemed, and how she reacted when he gave her the fruits and the $20. Clara stopped what she was doing, looking at her husband with eyes full of admiration. "You did the right thing, Sam. That's what the world needs, small acts of kindness." Ethan, listening intently while biting into an orange, looked at his father with pride. "Dad, you're like a hero. Like the ones in the movies." Sam laughed, shaking his head. "No, Ethan. I'm just a man trying to do what's right." As night fell over Oak Ridge, Sam and Clara tucked Ethan into bed. Then, they sat together on the porch of their house, watching the starry sky. "I hope that girl finds her way," Sam said thoughtfully. "The world can be harsh, but sometimes, a little help can make all the difference." Clara held his hand, offering the silent comfort only she knew how to give. "I know she found the light that day, Sam. And that's something no one can take away." And that night, Sam fell asleep with the hope that his small gesture had planted a seed of change in the girl's life. Time passed quietly in Oak Ridge, as it often does in small towns. The seasons changed, the children in the square grew up, and the fruit stalls gradually gave way to larger, more modern supermarkets. For Sam Carter, life followed a course he had never imagined. He continued working in the square for many years, but age and weariness began to take their toll. Though he still maintained his warm smile and willingness to serve customers, his body showed signs that it couldn't keep up forever. The girl to whom he had given some fruits and $20 on an ordinary day became a faint memory. In the days following their encounter, he often wondered what had happened to her. Had she found a safe place? Someone to take care of her? But daily life quickly enveloped him once more, and the girl was swallowed by forgetfulness. To Sam, the gesture had been just one small act of kindness among many others. Over the years, Sam watched his son, Ethan, grow into a man. He was proud of the young man he had raised. Ethan was hardworking, honest, and had a generous heart, just like his father. Sam stood by him at every important milestone, when he graduated from school, when he started working, and later, when he fell in love with Rose, a kind and optimistic woman who fit perfectly into the Carter family. When Ethan and Rose got married, Sam's house was filled with life once again. His wife, Clara, enthusiastically organized every detail of the ceremony. She was the family's cornerstone, keeping everyone united with her patience and welcoming spirit. Sam and Clara watched their son's wedding with tears of joy, proud that they had built a solid foundation for Ethan to move forward in life. However, happiness didn't last as long as Sam had hoped. A few years after Ethan's wedding, Clara began to fall ill. At first, it was minor complaints, fatigue, bone aches, a lingering cold. But over time, it became clear that something more serious was happening. Sam took her to doctors in neighboring towns, desperate for answers, but the diagnosis was devastating, a degenerative disease that the doctors could treat but not cure. For the next 2 years, Sam dedicated himself entirely to caring for Clara. He left his fruit stall, abandoning the work he had loved so much to stay by her side. Ethan and Rose helped as much as they could, but Sam insisted that Clara needed him more than ever. He held her hand during difficult nights, prepared her favorite meals even when she had no appetite, and read to her the books she had always loved. When Clara finally passed away, Sam felt as though a part of him had gone with her. He was left with the house, the memories, and a void that seemed to fill every corner. Ethan and Rose encouraged him to move in with them, but at first, Sam refused, determined to preserve the independence he had always valued. But Sam's health began to deteriorate shortly after. The years of hard work at the square had taken their toll. He suffered from severe arthritis, which made even the simplest movements painful. His back ached constantly, and his vision began to fail. Though he never complained, Ethan knew his father could no longer live alone. Eventually, Sam relented and moved into Ethan and Rose's house. They arranged a small room for him on the ground floor with a view of the garden. Sam resisted the idea of depending on anyone at first, but over time, he realized that being with Ethan and Rose was a blessing. Despite this, he missed the freedom he once had, the work that gave him purpose, and, most of all, Clara. Rose was patient and caring with Sam. She prepared his meals, ensured he took his medication, and always found time to talk to him, even on her busiest days. Ethan, for his part, did his best to balance work and caring for his father, often coming home late but always stopping to ask how Sam was. Despite the love and care he received, Sam felt useless. He spent his days sitting in his rocking chair by the window, watching the garden. He rarely left the house except for medical appointments, and his life had been reduced to a series of monotonous routines. Although he was grateful to Ethan and Rose, he couldn't shake the feeling that he was a burden. "Dad, you did so much for me and Mom," Ethan would tell him whenever Sam expressed his concerns. "Now it's our turn to take care of you." Sam would smile and nod, but the feeling of helplessness remained. He thought about the years when he had been strong, the days when he worked under the sun, talking to the residents of Oak Ridge, feeling like he was part of something bigger. Now, it all seemed so distant. He had no idea that life was about to surprise him once more. That amid the monotony and loneliness he felt, someone from his past was about to knock on his door, bringing not only memories but also a renewed sense of hope. Ethan and Rose's house was quiet that morning, except for the occasional sound of birds outside and the soft rustle of the wind passing through the backyard trees. Sam Carter rested in the small room on the ground floor, while Rose finished tidying up the kitchen after preparing breakfast. The tension in the house was palpable. The family's savings were nearly gone, and despite Ethan spending every day looking for work, the results were frustratingly scarce. Rose, who worked night shifts at a convenience store to supplement their income, spent her mornings caring for Sam. Despite her constant fatigue, she did her best to maintain a welcoming environment, but the financial stress was beginning to take its toll. Sam was acutely aware of this. And it was precisely that knowledge that made the weight on his shoulders feel unbearable. "I'm a burden," he murmured to himself as he gazed out the window, watching the shadows of the trees dance in the wind. He didn't like admitting this to Ethan or Rose, but he felt that, instead of helping, his presence only made things more complicated. As Sam rested, Rose heard a knock at the door. Not expecting anyone, she frowned as she glanced out the window. Setting aside the dishcloth in her hands, she went to the door and opened it. Standing before her was a tall, well-dressed young woman. Her impeccable blue suit contrasted sharply with the modest surroundings. She carried a black briefcase in one hand and had a calm smile on her face. "Good morning," the woman said in a clear and confident voice. "My name is Emily Turner. I'm an attorney, and I'm looking for Mr. Samuel Carter." Rose blinked, surprised. "My father-in-law?" "Yes, he lives here." "I'm Rose, his daughter-in-law. Is there a problem?" "Not at all," Emily quickly reassured her with a soothing smile. "I'd like to speak with him. If it's not an inconvenience, of course." "Of course, please come in," Rose said, gesturing for Emily to enter. She led Emily into the modest living room and offered her a chair near the window. The house was simple but welcoming, with old furniture and family photographs adorning the walls. Emily briefly glanced at a picture of Sam standing next to Ethan and Rose before sitting down. "I'll call him," Rose said, still intrigued, as she went to Sam's room. "Dad," she said, knocking lightly on the door. "You have a visitor." Sam looked at her with furrowed brows. "A visitor? Who could it be?" "An attorney. Her name is Emily Turner. She seems important." Curious, Sam got up with some difficulty, leaning on his cane. Rose helped him walk to the living room, where Emily was waiting, calmly gazing out the window. When she heard their steps, she turned and smiled. "Mr. Carter," she said, standing to greet him. "It's a pleasure to finally meet you." Sam looked at her for a moment, confused. She seemed polite and kind, but he couldn't imagine what a well-dressed attorney would want with him. "Yes, that's me. But I must say, I have no idea who you are. Emily extended her hand, which he shook hesitantly. That's understandable. It's been a long time since our paths crossed. Sam sat down in his usual rocking chair, observing her attentively. If it's been so long, why are you looking for me now? Emily sat down again, placing the briefcase on her lap. I'm looking for someone who used to sell fruit at a stall in Oak Ridge's Central Square. Sam tilted his head, surprised. Well, that would be me. But it's been a few years since I stopped selling fruit. My health doesn't allow it anymore. Yes, I heard that, Emily said. When I asked about you at the square, they said you stopped about 2 years ago. They also said that if I wanted to know more, I should go to Oak Tree Farm. Sam smiled faintly. Ah, yes, Oak Tree. I used to get my fruit from there. Good folks. Did you visit the farm? Emily nodded. I did. I spoke with the farmer. He spoke very highly of you and mentioned that you now live with your family. He's the one who gave me this address. And all of this to find an old fruit seller? Sam asked, even more intrigued. You're making me curious, Ms. Turner. Why were you looking for me? Emily hesitated for a moment, as if gathering courage to continue. Then, she leaned slightly forward, her eyes meeting his. Because you changed my life. Sam froze, blinking a few times. Chong, what? I don't even know who you are. I'm the girl you gave $20 to, many years ago, Emily said, her voice soft but charged with emotion. Sam remained silent. The memory returned like a lightning bolt. He recalled the girl standing near his stall, with torn clothes and a hungry gaze. He remembered how quickly she ate the apple, as if she were desperate. He remembered the fruits he placed in the bag, the $20 bill he handed over, and how she disappeared shortly afterward. You, Sam began, his voice faltering. You're that girl? Emily nodded, a small smile touching her lips as her eyes filled with tears. Yes, I am. Sam leaned back in his chair, shocked. He had never imagined that day would return to him in any way. For a moment, he didn't know what to say. Memories and reality blended together, leaving him speechless. Silence hung in the room as Sam tried to process what he had just heard. The well-dressed, confident woman in front of him was the same hungry girl he had helped so many years ago. His heart felt heavy, not only from the surprise but also from wondering what that child had endured before and after that day. Emily took a deep breath, as if preparing to open a door she had kept closed for a long time. Let me tell you my story, Mr. Carter, she began, her voice firm but charged with emotion. It's important for you to know why I'm here. Sam nodded, and Rose, who was sitting beside him, watched Emily closely, feeling a mix of curiosity and empathy. Emily clasped her hands on her lap and began to speak. I never knew who my biological parents were, she said. I was left at an orphanage when I was very young. My only memory of them is a crumpled photograph I found in the pocket of an old jacket. I grew up in a system that wasn't designed to care for children like me. The orphanage wasn't a bad place, but it wasn't a home either. She paused, as if carefully choosing her words. When I was 7, I was adopted by a couple who seemed perfect at first. They were kind, loving, everything a child could wish for. For a while, I believed I had found my family. Sam leaned slightly forward, already feeling a pang in his chest. He knew the story was about to take a darker turn. But then everything changed, Emily continued, her eyes shining with contained pain. They had a biological child 2 years later. And suddenly, I was no longer part of the family. I became a burden, an intruder. They ignored me, left me alone for long periods, and sometimes punished me for things I hadn't even done. Emily lowered her eyes for a moment, her voice trembling slightly. By the time I was 10, I knew I wasn't loved. And one day, after a terrible argument, I decided to run away. I took some clothes, the little money I had, and left the house. I thought living on the streets would be better than enduring that. Rose covered her mouth with her hand, shocked. Sam just stared at Emily, unsure how to respond to such a revelation. He couldn't imagine what that girl must have faced on her own. Living on the streets was the hardest period of my life, Emily continued, her voice more controlled. I was only 10, with no one to protect me. I slept in alleys, went hungry, and fear was my constant companion. That's how you found me that day, standing near your fruit stall. Sam nodded slightly, now remembering the scene vividly. You looked so small, so scared. I was, Emily said, smiling faintly. But when you called out to me, when you gave me those fruits and the $20, something changed. You were the first person in a long time to treat me as if I mattered. Those $20 might not seem like much, but to me, they meant everything. She paused before continuing. I used the money to buy clean clothes at a thrift store. With what was left, I bought discounted chocolates and sold them to make a small profit. That helped me survive for a few more weeks. Eventually, I was taken in by a group of volunteers at a shelter for homeless children. Sam took a deep breath, feeling a mix of relief and sadness. So, you found help? Yes, Emily replied. They got me back into school and helped me rebuild my life. But it wasn't easy. I knew I had to seize every opportunity because there wouldn't be a second chance. She straightened her shoulders, her posture reflecting the strength she had built over the years. I studied hard. I discovered a passion for law. I wanted to help children like me, to ensure that none of them went through what I did. Slowly, I carved out a path for myself. I earned a scholarship to college, graduated in law, and started working on adoption and child protection cases. Rose, who had been silent until now, spoke with a voice full of emotion. So, you turned all that pain into something positive. That's incredible. Emily smiled at her. It was difficult, but I knew I had to do something meaningful. And through it all, I never forgot you, Mr. Carter. The kindness you showed me was the beginning of everything. You didn't just give me fruits and money. You gave me hope. And that's something priceless. Sam wiped away a tear that rolled down his cheek. He couldn't find the words to express what he was feeling. Everything he had done that afternoon seemed so small, so insignificant, yet it had changed a life. You did all this on your own, he finally said, his voice low but steady. I only gave you fruits and $20. The rest was all you. It wasn't just that, Emily said, her eyes shining. It was the spark. And now, I'm here to give back. I want to help you, just as you helped me. The comfortable silence in the living room was interrupted by the sound of a door opening. Ethan entered, carrying a worn folder of documents and wearing a slight smile. His tired expression, the result of weeks of relentless searching, seemed lit up by something different. He was about to announce the news he had been eager to share, but he stopped upon seeing Rose, Sam, and a woman he didn't know seated in the living room, deeply engrossed in a conversation full of emotion. Oh, Ethan, you're here. Rose exclaimed, quickly standing up. Come here, there's someone you need to meet. Ethan looked at the woman curiously as he walked over. Who is she? Sam, clearly moved, smiled at his son. Ethan, this is Emily Turner. Do you remember the girl I helped at the square many years ago? I gave her some fruit and $20. Well, this is her. Ethan frowned for a moment, searching his memory for that distant day. He had been just a boy at the time, but he remembered his father recounting the act of kindness. Of course, I remember, he said, extending his hand to Emily. It's a pleasure to meet you. My father talked about you that night. He was worried about what had happened to you. Emily shook his hand with a smile. Well, now he doesn't need to worry anymore. And I'm the one who wants to repay him for what he did for me. Ethan looked at his father, surprised. So, all this is because of that day? Sam shook his head humbly. I just did what any decent person would do. It wasn't just that, Emily interjected, leaning slightly forward, her voice brimming with emotion. You don't understand the impact you had. It was a small gesture for you, but for me, it was everything. Sam tried to hold back tears, but he couldn't stop the wave of emotion that washed over him. He took a deep breath before saying, "You don't have to do this. Anyone could have given you those $20. Emily smiled, her eyes glistening. "Yes, I know. But it wasn't just anyone. It was you. And now I want to give back the kindness you showed me." Rose, who had been observing the exchange, spoke hesitantly. "Emily, are you sure you want to help? I mean, we're incredibly grateful, but this is a big gesture." Emily turned to Rose, her expression firm. "I'm absolutely sure. I'm here because I want to do something for Mr. Carter. I want him to receive the best medical care. I don't want him to have to worry about anything." Ethan placed a hand on Sam's shoulder, sharing a look of gratitude with his wife. "Emily, we don't even know how to thank you. My wife and I do our best, but we are facing some difficulties." Before he could continue, Sam looked at him curiously. "You said we were? Does that mean?" Ethan smiled, now visibly more at ease. "I got a job. I start next week. It's at a small maintenance company, but the owner said they're expanding and that there's good potential for growth." "That's wonderful," Rose exclaimed, hugging her husband. She turned to Emily with a bright smile. "And today I'm off work, so why don't you stay for dinner? We have a lot to celebrate." Emily hesitated for a moment, but seeing the warm faces of Sam, Ethan, and Rose, she nodded with a smile. "I'd love to." The modest kitchen table, worn and marked by time, had never seemed as welcoming as it did that evening. Rose had prepared a hearty vegetable and meat stew, accompanied by fresh bread and an apple pie she baked while everyone talked. The aroma filled the house, and the atmosphere was warm and joyful. Sam sat at the head of the table, smiling as he watched the interaction between Ethan, Rose, and Emily. He rarely saw his son and daughter-in-law so relaxed, and it was as if Emily's presence brought a new energy to the house. "So, Emily," Rose began as she served the pie, "what's it like working as an attorney?" "It sounds so exciting." Emily laughed lightly. "It is exciting, but it's also very challenging. I mostly work on adoption and child protection cases. I try to ensure that children in difficult situations find homes where they are truly loved and cared for." Ethan, eating a piece of bread, commented, "You're basically making sure no child goes through what you did." Emily nodded, smiling. "Exactly. If I can use my experience to make a difference, then I know I'm on the right path." Sam looked at her with admiration. "You turned your pain into something beautiful, Emily. That's more than I ever could have imagined." The conversation continued, filled with laughter and shared stories. It was a simple evening, but for Sam, it was special. He realized that his act of kindness years ago had created something much larger than he could have ever dreamed. And as he watched his family and Emily interact as if they were old friends, he felt more grateful than ever. The next day began like any other at Ethan and Rose's house. Sam was in the living room, sitting in his rocking chair near the window, while Ethan made calls related to his new job and Rose busied herself in the kitchen. The atmosphere in the house felt lighter after the previous night's dinner, as if a new energy had filled the space. Shortly after noon, Emily returned. This time, she was dressed more casually, a white blouse and black pants, and carried a folder full of documents. Rose greeted her with a warm smile and invited her inside. "It's so good to see you again," Rose said as she served coffee. "I'm sure Sam will be happy to see you." Ethan appeared shortly afterward, shaking Emily's hand. "You arrived at the perfect time. My dad was just talking about last night and how special it was." Emily smiled, looking at ease. "I was delighted to be here last night. And, honestly, I also brought a few things to discuss today." When Sam was called, he appeared with his cane, looking at Emily curiously. "You came back," he said with a smile. "I didn't expect someone as busy as you to spend more time with an old man like me." Emily laughed, sitting next to him. "Mr. Carter, you can stop saying that. I'm not wasting time with you. I'm here because I want to help." "You already have," Sam replied humbly. "Last night was wonderful. That's more than I ever expected. Emily shook her head. But I don't think it's enough. She opened the folder and pulled out some papers. I've been thinking about how I can do more for you and your family. I have some ideas. The room fell silent, with all eyes on Emily. She arranged the documents on the table and began to explain. First of all, I want to cover Mr. Carter's medical expenses. I know healthcare can be expensive, and I want to ensure he receives the best possible care. Rose looked at Ethan, visibly emotional, while Sam protested. Emily, that's too much. You've already done enough. I don't want you spending your money on me. Emily firmly held his hand. Mr. Carter, you saved my life when no one else looked out for me. This isn't just about money. It's about giving back the kindness you showed me. Ethan nodded but asked, Are you sure about this? I mean, we're grateful, but why would you do so much for us? Emily responded with a calm smile. Because, as I said before, it wasn't just anyone who helped me. It was Mr. Carter. And besides, I see how much you all care for each other. I want to be part of that. Rose discreetly wiped away a tear and held Emily's hand. We can never thank you enough. Emily smiled. You've already thanked me. But there's one more thing I'd like to discuss. More? Sam asked, surprised. Emily, you're leaving me speechless. Emily chuckled lightly before continuing. I want to help Ethan and Rose too. I know Ethan just got a job, which is fantastic, but I want to offer something that could truly change everything for you. Ethan furrowed his brow, intrigued. What do you mean? Emily leaned forward slightly, her expression becoming more serious. I work at a growing law firm. Recently, we've started expanding our operations to include consulting and support for small businesses. We need someone with experience in maintenance and logistics to help us with this expansion. After hearing about your experience, I thought you might be perfect for the role. Ethan was stunned. You're offering me a job? Emily smiled. Yes, I am. And it's not just any job. It's a stable position with benefits and growth opportunities. Honestly, it would be great to work with someone I trust. Rose held Ethan's arm, her eyes shining with excitement. Ethan, this is incredible. Sam looked at Emily, his expression a mix of surprise and gratitude. You're offering us all this, why? Emily replied sincerely. Because I know what it means to receive help when you need it most. And I know that if Mr. Carter were in my place, he would do exactly the same. Ethan remained silent for a few moments before breaking into a wide smile. Emily, I don't even know what to say. This would change our lives. Then say yes, Emily said with a smile. Ethan looked at Rose and then at Sam, who nodded slightly, clearly moved. Yes, Ethan said. I accept. Several months had passed, and Ethan and Rose's house was livelier than ever. The garden, once a simple green space, now bloomed with plants Rose had lovingly cultivated, symbolizing a new beginning. Inside, the smell of freshly baked apple pie filled the air, while laughter and conversations echoed throughout the house. Sam sat in his rocking chair, looking out the window as he often did. But this time, he didn't see just the trees swaying in the wind. He saw life blossoming around him. His health had improved significantly thanks to the treatment Emily had ensured, and although he still depended on Ethan and Rose, he felt less like a burden and more like part of a family full of possibilities. Ethan entered the living room, carrying a stack of documents from his new job. Dad, I closed that logistics deal today. It was challenging, but Emily said she was impressed. I knew you'd do a great job, son, Sam replied with pride. He had never seen Ethan so confident and excited about the future. Rose appeared shortly afterward, holding a tray with the apple pie. It's ready. Come to the table before it gets cold. Someone let Emily know it's time to eat. I'm here. Emily's voice rang out as she entered, carrying a bag of gifts for the family. I wouldn't miss apple pie for anything. The table was quickly set, and everyone gathered around, laughing and talking. Emily seemed completely at home, as if she had been part of the family forever. Sam watched her with admiration, feeling warmth in his heart as he saw the woman the little girl had become. After dinner, while Rose and Ethan cleaned up the kitchen, Sam and Emily remained in the living room. Sam looked at her for a moment before speaking, his voice filled with emotion. "Emily, you know you've changed our lives, don't you?" Emily smiled gently. "Mr. Carter, I only did what you would have done." "But it's more than that," Sam continued. "You brought hope to this house. I never could have imagined that something so simple, so many years ago, would bring us here." Emily nodded, her expression serene. "Sometimes, it's the small gestures that make the biggest differences. You gave me a chance, and I'll always remember that. Now it's my turn to make sure others have the same opportunities." "You're incredible, Emily," Sam said, tears welling up in his eyes. "I'm so proud of you." Emily took his hand and squeezed it gently. "And I'm proud of you. If it weren't for your kindness, I might never have discovered my potential. Your faith in humanity changed everything." They continued talking for a few more minutes, but Sam knew those words would stay with him forever. That night, as he prepared for bed, he felt at peace in a way he hadn't for a long time. He had learned a powerful lesson: the impact of a kind gesture can be greater than anyone imagines. And as he closed his eyes, he smiled, knowing that his story, like Emily's, had come full circle. A simple act of compassion had created a legacy of hope, not just for the girl he had helped but also for his own family. If you enjoyed this story, don't forget to subscribe to the channel, like the video, leave a comment, and check out our next story.